There has been a new announcement from Homeland Security, and I think everybody needs to hear this, especially if you are on social media. In particular, if you are an international. Pay attention to this, folks. This is what is happening now with the DHS. The U.S. says it is monitoring immigrants' social media for anti-Semitism. This is the big news that's breaking this week. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has announced it will begin screening immigrants' social media for evidence of anti-Semitic activity as grounds for denying immigration benefit requests. The screenings will affect people applying for a permanent resident status, as well as foreigners affiliated with educational institutions. The policy will go into effect immediately. Yes, MBD, Ruh-roh is right. I want to explain to you how this is going to impact our economy, because I don't know if everybody went there. Check it out, man. The higher education institution in this country greatly depends on and relies on international students for admission. This is not to say that they don't take or, of course, admit domestic students. Of course they do. But I've worked at universities for over 10 years, and I've also worked in admissions, and I'm here to break it to you. A lot of these universities are not going to fare well if they do not have a certain amount of international applicants admitted to these universities, and I want to explain why. International students do not receive financial aid. That's only for domestic students. International students have to have something else, particularly those that are applying for undergrad. They have to be able to prove that they can pay, or their family members can pay, tuition for all 4 years. The universities are businesses. They do rely on that money that comes in, especially nowadays that the middle class is pretty much non-existent. More and more students are applying for financial aid or need financial aid to attend college. So this is something that could impact us economically, particularly the higher education institution, because they rely on that money. They rely on all these schools I worked at, Boston University, Harvard, Northeastern. Actually, I was grad assistant at Northeastern, but you know what I'm saying. MIT, especially, all of these universities, they rely on a certain percentage of international students because they can pay outright. Now, it's a little bit different when it comes to the PhD programs. PhD students receive stipend from the government. That's a little bit different. But we're looking at something that could actually shake up the higher education field. And I mention this because these schools have employees. I was one of them. And what that could mean is if these programs are not meeting their admission, quota, these universities, once again, could be looking at laying off people. And I saw it happen during the pandemic. People were laid off because guess what? Couldn't bring over some of the international students. So just to sound the alarm about that, ladies and gentlemen, but Homeland Security, this is going to be scary. In a statement issued Wednesday morning, the Department of Homeland Security said it will protect the homeland from extremists and terrorist aliens, including those who support anti-Semitic terrorism, violent anti-Semitic ideologies, and anti-Semitic terrorist organizations such as Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, or the Houthis. Now, let me explain to you how they can actually stretch this out, and it can apply to people that may just have like a Palestinian flag in their bio on their social media profile. Remember, there are some in this administration that consider even that Palestinian flag to be anti-Semitic. If the ADL were to push forward more rules around what they deem to be anti-Semitic, then that could mean that the Palestinian flag, they could see that as anti-Semitic. It could mean that just in a way, if you even said, I want the genocide to stop on social media, they could see that as anti-Semitic, there's no telling how far this can go. So you may not be an international student, but remember, it usually starts with one group first before it spreads to other groups. Also in this announcement, they went on to say there is no room in the United States for the rest of the world's terrorist sympathizers, and we are under no obligation to admit them or let them stay here. Now, that is coming from DHS Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs there. And what this is showing you, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining, the U.S. says it is now monitoring immigrants' social media for anti-Semitism. Like I said, they can start with them first, and then they can, transfer this over to those of us who are citizens. And I have never seen our government move this way for any other group. I have never seen our government move this way for any other group. Look how far they're willing to go to protect Israel. But it didn't start here. As I said, the theme is changing history. I just want to remind you what happened 3 years ago.
The federal government is launching a new effort to track down domestic extremists on social media. The Secretary of Homeland Security and the Attorney General both testified today before the Senate Appropriations Committee about a new program to analyze intel about security threats. NBC News correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now. Julia, how exactly will this new DHS Intel initiative work?
Well, Morgan, it's the latest iteration of the same mission that actually started under the Obama administration, and that's to try to prevent domestic violent and just violent extremist attacks before they even begin. Under the Obama administration, it mainly focused on trying to interrupt people who might be convinced to join ISIS or a jihadi extremist ideology online. Now, because the threat has changed so much, this version, known as the Center for Prevention and Partnerships, will focus on primarily, at this point, looking out for those domestic violent extremists, which is what Secretary Mayorkas said is a persistent and lethal threat, the most persistent and lethal threat to the United States right now. And the Attorney General agreed with him. What's different about the way they're doing this program versus those under the Trump or Obama administrations is they have $77 million specifically set aside to disrupt, prevent, and look out for the disinformation that could lead to domestic violent extremism. This isn't as part of an effort to surveil anyone, arrest anyone simply for free speech. It's to try to prevent them from even getting to that point. A lot of this could come from community partnerships or even researchers and scholars who are studying this phenomenon and why it's so widespread in our culture right now.
Hey, NBC News viewers.
I had to show you that because that was from 3 years ago. Not exactly the same policy, but Donald Trump is adding on to a policy that Joe Biden had by now saying we're going to crack down on social media for those who are immigrants. He's just adding on to it. Notice in that video, she said it actually started under Barack Obama. So this is a continuation of something that started years ago, and now it's even worse than it was before. Now, of course, not everybody is in agreement with this. In fact, there are other Jewish organizations that have spoken out against it. I want to go ahead and bring this in here from Common Dreams. Thank you, Common Dreams. It says a Jewish group says Trump using Jews as an excuse to spy on social media posts of immigrants. One critic accused the administration of cynically claiming to be fighting anti-Semitism despite being the most openly anti-Semitic U.S. administration in history. A Jewish-led progressive advocacy group was among those expressing horror Wednesday at a new policy unveiled by the Trump administration as part of what it claims is a wide-scale effort to protect Jewish people from anti-Semitism, but which critics warn is itself anti-Semitic. Listen to this. They go into the decision there from Homeland Security. And I want you to hear what this person says here. It says that Bend the Arc, Jewish Action is an example of the administration using Jews as an excuse to move a cruel anti-immigrant authoritarian agenda. This will not fight anti-Semitism, said the group. We refuse to be used this way. Goes on to say, effective immediately, that they are going to start targeting people, because that's really what this is, targeting people. It says that the agency cited Donald Trump's executive orders that he says are aimed at combating anti-Semitism, which have also been used to round up international students, deny them due process, and threaten them with deportation for speaking out against Palestinian rights. And one thing that I want to add, recent news that was just reported today, student Mahmoud Khalil, it has just been confirmed by a federal judge that he can be deported. That was announced Friday. So I just want people to understand how dangerous this is going to become. Remember when Matt Taibbi wrote about the Twitter files? He was on the show to talk about that a couple of times, actually. One of the big criticisms that Matt Taibbi had is that the US government was actually trying to police Twitter and the executives at Twitter, trying to tell them what they could or could not have on their platform. In particular, things like the Hunter Biden laptop story. So what we are seeing is a continuation of that. And I say continuation because I want people to understand this didn't start under Donald Trump. It started under Joe Biden, and they are now continuing it and adding other pieces to it. So you're seeing that both administrations are not pro-free speech. And that definition of anti-Semitism, they can change it to whatever they want. Like I said, some of these government officials like Marco Rubio, who actually said Mahmoud Khalil didn't do anything criminally wrong, he just didn't like his politics. That's how dangerous this has become. Regardless of what side you're on, you may not be in favor of the pro-Palestinian protests, but it's only going to come a time when there is a cause that you are in favor of, and they're going to crack down on that one. It goes on to say here, DHS did not specify what views expressed on social media could be used against anti-immigrant applying for benefits, but its approach to the State Department's Catch and Revoke program, targeting international students who have called for their schools to divest from Israel, suggests the agency won't simply be looking for immigrants who threaten the safety of Jewish people. So, Kate Ruin, the director of the Free Expression Project at the Center for Democracy and Technology, said that in addition to targeting people based on nothing more than their First Amendment protected expression, it will likely use error-prone automated tools to detect what it views as anti-Semitic activity. And this is one of the more dangerous parts, because we all know that technology is not perfect. We know that sometimes these tools can grab something that they think is one thing, but it's not. There are a number of my comrades that have had to deal with this with YouTube. There are a number of my comrades that had to do significant appeals because they were accused of saying something they didn't say because these little spiders that crawl across the website misread something. So this is dangerous territory. And I would hope nobody agrees with this. The government, our government that we have in this country is very much bought off. Very much bought off. And honestly, when we talk about changing history, what they're really trying to do here is they're trying to rewrite history. They're trying to make it so that we do not continue to know what Israel has done. This is the first step, ladies and gentlemen. What else do you think is coming next? Are they going to change the history books? Are they going to change the Bible? Think about it. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.